late after lunch? No, we're ready to go. Excellent, excellent. My name is Wendy Swart Grossman, and I am a consultant working with Catherine Gross with the Charlotte Foundation. And Charlotte Foundation is a really small family foundation, and we're based in Cambridge, but we work all over Greater Boston, really addressing issues around Boston's young people in the area of education, opportunity, and youth violence prevention. But today, I've been asked by the Social Innovation Lab to play the role of talk show host as we delve into this topic of innovations in local philanthropy with 4 wonderful panelists here who work in Essex County. Raise your hand. There you go. That's Julie. Springfield. Sally. Yeah. Cape Cod. Kevin. And Lowell. You are. You're very good for lots of reasons. You're good. So local, innovative local philanthropy, really giving, means not only who is really doing the cool stuff in creative ways, but who's doing the cool stuff in creative ways really well. And that's what I've been asked here to be here today. So our 4 panelists have all found their own secret sauce, if you will, that's made their innovative local philanthropy and giving appropriate, impactful, and meaningful. And they're going to share with us some of the ingredients that make up that sauce. And just so we don't forget the recipe, are you liking these culinary metaphors here? While we're talking, this is the beautiful and incredibly intelligent Allie Frankel, who's a Northeastern University student here. And she's working as our graphic reporter on the white wall over there. So to really track what it is that we're talking about here. And when we're done, feel free to take a photo of it, tweet it if you'd like, and to remind yourself of the innovation and the locally grown and, dare I say, organic ingredients that you can recreate in your own community. Here we go. So last week, the panelists and I, we had a conference call to really figure out and discuss what it was we wanted to really get across to you all in this short time that we have with you today. And while they're going to get into the nitty-gritty when they're talking, I just wanted to put 3 thoughts for you guys to keep in mind as they're talking. So, these big themes. The first one really is that innovation, as all of our speakers have been talking about all today, have been beating you over the head, and you probably all know, but it all starts with the conversation. Finding the conversations you want to be a part of that are out there, joining an existing conversation, or God forbid, if there isn't a conversation started already. Yes, that's what we're about, okay? The second thing that we're really, the big theme that we're going to be talking about, is that innovation, this is messy. And we need to figure out how to embrace that mess. But sometimes as a little bit of an OCD person, I like to think of it as controlled chaos, if it makes you feel a little bit better. And the third issue that we're really, the big theme of today is really, this is all a balancing game. All philanthropy really is, and the innovation in it, balancing the foundation's needs, wants, desires, hopes, and dreams with that of the community's needs, wants, desires, hopes, and dreams. So, our panelists, what we're going to do here, our panelists are going to be introducing themselves to you all and sharing with you their superhero strength. Perhaps it's real, perhaps it's just aspirational. But certainly it's a power that has been a necessary element in their successful innovation within their communities. And then we'll finish with the introductions that they're going to answer one big question to lay out for you their model while addressing particular elements of their success. And then we'll open up the panel with specific questions that you may have as you tap into your own superhero strength to figure out how you can be innovative in your own community. And maybe share with us what you've already been doing. Does that make sense? And then we'll all be out of here by 2:30. Ready to go? Okay, so why don't we start with our panelists? We're doing an alphabetical order by first name. Julie Bishop, you're on.
Okay. I'm Julie Bishop. I'm the Vice President. Oops. Oh, got to use technology. Is it working?
It is.
Oh, okay. I'm Julie Bishop. I'm Vice President of Grants and Services for the Essex County Community Foundation. Does everyone know where Essex County is? Yes. Okay. I thought it was going to have to draw. I thought Allie was going to have to draw a map. We're on the North Shore. We're up in Merrimack Valley, where there's good beaches and fried clams. And so we serve the 750,000 people who live in Essex County. That includes 34 towns and cities, including 6 of the Commonwealth's gateway cities. I'm going to read them here, because I wouldn't remember them off the top of my head. Haverhill, Lawrence, Lynn, Methuen, Peabody, and Salem. We also have some of the wealthiest suburbs in the Commonwealth as well up in Essex County. So that gives us some great need combined with some great resources, which provides some great challenges for local giving.
Can you tell us about your superhero strength?
Well, you told me what my superhero strength was. Wow, you even got a little
Got a little
right
idea.
there. All right, I guess
Looking at the PowerPoint
I'm a
of the video.
courageous convener. All right. Pulling people together from all walks of life. Okay, we'll talk about that.
Exactly. I don't have a theme song for you yet.
Oh,
We'll
shoot.
work on that.
Hi, my name is Kevin Howard. I'm the president and CEO of the Arts Foundation of Cape Cod. That's Barnstable County, but most people think Cape Cod, where there are the best beaches in Massachusetts. And the biggest, 400 square miles.
We have 5.
It's a beach off over
Yeah,
now.
there you go. So our foundation is dedicated to support, promote, and strengthen arts and culture and the creative economy on Cape Cod. And I'm Captain Connector. I have the ability to unlock the potential of relationships. I also tried to fly, but it just didn't work out. So I'm afraid we'll just have to keep it grounded.
Hi, I'm Phil Hall. I work at a place in Boston called GMA Foundations, and I have quite a number of colleagues that I work with, and we staff about 40 foundations on an annual sort of ongoing basis. What I'm going to talk about today is the Theodore Edson Parker Foundation. All of these foundations, by the way, although they don't state it overtly, are using geography very strategically, mostly, sometimes not so strategically, often having to do with where family members live. But we're used to speaking of our grants in terms of the national taxonomy and elder, social service, housing, that kind of thing. Really, equally as important, I think, is the way funders use their geography. And Parker is a good example of one approach.
Talk about your
Oh,
superhero strength.
Gee, ability. Look at that.
You didn't even know it. Phil,
I'm called the webmaster. Well, let's hope so.
Hi, I'm Sally Fuller. I'm with the Irene E. and George A. Davis Foundation. We're a family foundation located in Springfield, Massachusetts. We fund in Hampden County. Our funders, our trustees are local, so Hampden County is what we do. We care very deeply about Springfield and Holyoke, which are two gateway cities that have the two poorest performing public school systems in the Commonwealth. In Holyoke, 13% of children read proficiently by the end of 3rd grade, and in Springfield, 35% of kids read proficiently by the end of 3rd grade. That's my focus, so that's why I mentioned that to you. We're a family foundation that has made its money in manufacturing, so education is very important to us, and that's the work I focus on.
Can you talk about your superhero strength?
I am a gadfly goddess, and you'll understand a little bit more about that when I talk, but what I have said is that I have the ability to be lots of places in our community at lots of different times. I'm always having conversations with people and organizations in order to find new partnerships. What I will tell you is this work that we do is totally messy and totally not linear, even though there are people who would like you to think it's easy to get from point A to point B. It's not. And I really work, and I never know when an organization or a corporation or another foundation in our community is going to join our initiatives. So it is the ability to have lots of conversations with lots of people, and they'll come, they'll join us at some point, but you really don't know when.
Thank you. So what we're going to do now is really tell us, we want our panelists here to tell us a story, because everybody likes an engaging story. So if you will, please panelists, if you could take us on your journey, thinking about what was your aha moment when you first realized the importance of local philanthropy, that it really and truly did matter for you in your area. Well, again, let's go down
Okay, I'm just going to take a second just to have an idea of what we're all about. Essex County Community Foundation, I'm going to refer to us as ECCF, is a community foundation. We're a foundation that focuses on our local community and support for Essex County. Does everyone know what community foundations do? Okay, well, this might be the rest of my talk. No. All right. Have you heard of the Boston Foundation, the Cambridge Foundation, the Brookline Foundation? There's actually 17 in Massachusetts, 700 across the country. So we're a little different than private foundations in that we're public charities, and we provide opportunities for donors to set up charitable funds with us, where we pool their assets and manage their money. And then we grant make based on recommendations that our funders have give us to a certain geographic area, as well as beyond, given what their interests are. So we're a little bit different than the other folks that are on the panel today. We have multiple donors with multiple interests, but our focus is on Essex County. We're 15 years old. We have a little over $26 million in assets under management. Our mission is simple: to promote philanthropy and strengthen nonprofits in Essex County. And we do that by raising funds, providing grant funding, and teaching and training. Our focus is Essex County. All those 34 communities, 2,500 nonprofits, and all of the issues, whether it's animal welfare or youth at risk and everything in between. In last year, we gave out $4.5 million. 78% of it was recommended by the donors based on the interests of their fund. And that could be everything from local food pantries to Northeastern University. We had some grants going over to Poland for environmental education. So they're all over the place. 45% of our funding stayed in Essex County last year. So all of that said, to give you a little background, what's been my aha moment and what's my story? I've had a lot of aha moments over 8 years as a foundation. But the one I wanted to tell you about, I thought might give you an idea of how we work as a relatively young community foundation to connect our nonprofits to other resources and provide them other forms of support in the community, which is all local philanthropy. So picture a rainy day in March. I know it's hard after last month to think of a cold, rainy day. But this was in 2007. Leslie Levinson visited me and asked for help with her young nonprofit called the Community Giving Tree. She's been leading the organization for a couple years. Like the founders of many nonprofit organizations, she herself had an aha moment. And that's when she used to drive around the beautiful streets of Boxford during Big Trash Day and see lots of nice toys and baby equipment and clothing left off on the curb, ready to be picked up and taken to the local dump. She also knew that right down the road was Lawrence, Massachusetts. And Lawrence had a lot of need for a lot of the items that were being thrown away. So she tried to figure out how she might possibly connect them. And she had a little light bulb go off. She and her friends would collect these items, they would put them in a warehouse, and she would connect with social workers in the community that could pass these items on to families that truly needed them. And then they would take the toys that they collected and have an annual toy sale, and that would partially fund her budget. So that all sounded great, except 2 or 3 years into it, she didn't have a board, she had no paid staff, she had no dependable funders, and she was exhausted. So she came to us and said, how can you help? So at that time, we had very little discretionary money to give Leslie, but we decided to use our powers. Whoops, I don't have my clicker. Which, no, that's all right. You can flip to the next one. That'll give you my message now. The powers that we have to leverage support for this organization that we knew were going to do such great work in our county. So we started off by first connecting Leslie with the funders in the community that we knew had the resources and the missions that would align with her priorities. We then connected her with agencies that would distribute her goods, and we invited her to take part in our annual Youth at Risk Conference, where we bring about 700 professionals together, convene them every year. Whoops, all right, I got my 1 minute sign. and where hundreds of social workers gathered so they could learn about her work. We counseled Leslie on board development, fundraising, staff development. We recommended consultants for her to use with her strategic planning. We told our donor advisors about her, and several of them started funding her. We invited her and her staff to participate in our workshops and to attend the institute that we do every year for board members and help with their board development leadership. And finally, we awarded them some grants, some small grants through our discretionary grant making and a small capital campaign grant. So, what happened with Leslie? With a lot of work and determination, in 2009, the Community Giving Tree completed their successful capital campaign and built a warehouse of 2,400 square feet to provide space so that social workers could come and gather goods. Last year, she served 6,000 kids and connected through 80 agencies across the county, Essex County, and Lowell. In all, we've given Leslie $26,000 in grants, but I think we've leveraged a lot of other resources for her to help her become a successful organization. And we continue to do that today. In fact, Phil, I just gave her your name because Leslie is now working in Lowell, and she's going to be calling you to see if the Parker Foundation may be interested in her work.
Beautiful setup, right?
Anyway, I love that one. So that's my story, and that's how our Messy Map, which is our Center for Nonprofit Excellence, and all the work that we do from grant making and other resources that we bring and help with local flips. How'd I do? A little over.
So I'm going to talk about the power of collaboration as part of my aha moment. Before I became the president and CEO of the Arts Foundation of Cape Cod, I was running the Cape Cod Conservatory of Music and Arts. And we had several conversations with the Cape Cod Symphony Orchestra, which is a wonderful regional orchestra. And that collaborative discussion turned into a merger discussion, which is very difficult to do, particularly in the nonprofit sector, because a lot of egos have to be put aside. And we created an entire campaign called Unite for Excellence. And we were able to raise in a 3.5-month period $350,000, which was for Cape Cod a lot of money. And we had a lot, not just big donors, but also small donors, because people love the idea of this this merger between these two organizations and the opportunity to do things like create a youth orchestra, which is now 43 strong. The power, some of the power came from foundations like the Cape Cod Foundation, community foundations. We were really able to get an entire region to buy into this wonderful plan, and it actually has exceeded anybody's expectations of how great the organization is. It's now the largest arts organization in Barnstable County. The student enrollment is up. The demographics of the symphony orchestra has changed dramatically, and it's a thriving organization. So it really is important to think big, because this was a big merger, and it ended up being something that created a sum that was much greater than its parts. In terms of a couple of other things from our organization, and we sort of do everything. We're grant seekers, we're grant makers, we're fundraisers. So we do programs, we do marketing, we do advocacy, and we do foundations. We actually do grants. We like to be leaders in advocacy. In fact, one of the photos that's up here is going to be of our entire Cape delegation coming to one of our conferences. We are constantly having those conversations with our elected officials to talk to them about the importance of the creative economy. 8% of our working population on the Cape is involved in the creative economy, and it works very much hand in glove with tourism, which is our top economic sector. As part of the regional leadership effort, we're going to be partnering with Mass Creative, and we are working on a program called Create the Vote, which is going to have an impact on the gubernatorial campaign, much the same as what happened here in Boston with the mayoral campaign. By the end of the campaign, none of the candidates, and I think there were 12, had any kind of arts and cultural platform. by the end, they all had cultural platforms. And in fact, now there's going to be an actual cabinet position for arts and culture. So it was incredibly important to be able to get our sector on the radar screen, and it took great organization, and now we plan on doing the same thing at the state level. The other thing that we are trying to do is leverage Cape Cod and its brand recognition. Cape Cod is literally known all over the world. We get travelers from, we just instituted an arts app, a mobile arts app, and it's been opened in every continent except Antarctica, and has been opened in over 25 languages. So it really is a global world that we compete in. So part of what we're doing is launching a new website, which is going to be called Arts Cape Cod. And for those of you who are in the Boston area, you have Arts Boston. It's going to be, we're partnering with them, and it will be the same thing. But it will be an opportunity to be able to use, to see where all the calendar of events are happening, have an online box office opportunity, and then we'll be able to feed all that information via RSS feed to all our media outlets. What that does is gives us 3,000 unique events that we can help 275 organizations. So I'm just going to leave you with this, which is for grant makers that are in the room, and I know there are some. Engage your constituency. We just went through a strategic planning process. We went and asked our constituency what they needed. So how can you best serve the organizations that you want to support? Some of that meant that we changed some of our funding guidelines and are actually giving some general operating fund money. And just because it's always been done that way doesn't mean it can't be improved. And for grant seekers, you just keep reaching out. You never know. The next person that you meet, maybe it's going to happen in the next half hour. You may meet somebody who becomes your biggest donor or your biggest volunteer. And then the last thing, just to say again, think big. The bigger your ideas, the more likely that they're going to happen. Thanks.
The picture behind you now, this was...
That's our entire Cape delegation at a program that we run called the Creative Collaborative Conference. We've spawned at least 15 programs out of this conference from people networking.
When you see the delegations of the elected officials?
Yes, that's our entire, including the Senate President, Bruce Mark.
My wife grew up in Michigan in the 70s, I guess, during one of those endless recessions in the Midwest, and they had a saying there, last person to leave, turn out the lights. And that, Lowell it's been known as a sort of a comeback city for many years now, but it had that period in the 70s when basically the economy was emptied out. And I know a person, Gary Kaplan, who runs a nonprofit actually to this day in Boston, but he used to be a reporter for the Lowell Sun. Lowell's kind of a one-street town, and on one end there's the old Lowell Sun building. Way up on the other end was a CVS, and he said in those days you could take the whole walk up to CVS to buy your pack of cigarettes, being a reporter, and you wouldn't see a single person. It's really changed a lot, and I think this is sort of a remnant of the old textile industry. But if you go to the next page, it changed because of superpower people like Pat Mogan, who was a superintendent of Lowell Public Schools at the time, and he worked obviously with state and federal government, but he got the kooky idea that actually you wouldn't want to leave this city, you'd want to stay and celebrate it, and celebrate its history. He is known as the father of the Lowell National Historical Park, which now has a budget of, I think, about $40 million, and was very instrumental in sort of changing the mindset in what was a kind of a dumpy old place. And it's still a very challenged sort of gateway Rust Belt city. So we could do the next slide. And it wasn't the sort of place that you would leave if you were Cambodian. Right after the Khmer Rouge, for whatever reason, and I think it had to do with resettlement policies initially at the federal level, Lowell now has the most Cambodians per capita of any city in the United States. It's second to Long Beach, California, but it's a small city. It's population of something like 120,000 now, and Cambodian population may be as high as 30,000. So that's the high end, but it was a very significant influx. Happen to know the guy with the AK-47 there, and you can go to the next slide because he settled in Lowell and became, among other things, a non-profit person and the president of the Southeast Asian Water Festival for a time. This festival you could visit every August. It really does attract about 50,000 Asians. You don't see them well in this picture, but it's an amazing thing. And it's become a real center. There's a Cambodian consulate in Lowell. It's a really happening place with the Cambodia town. And you can go to the next slide. It didn't scare away the artists who have started to come in great droves. This top one, Western Avenue Studios, is now full. I don't know how many hundreds of units. There are many, many arts festivals in the city now, including the well-known Folk Festival, which is the largest free one in the United States, et cetera, et cetera. And the housing of artists has become a big city strategy. So those are kind of the superpower forces, and there are others, many others, who've made this city come alive. And if we go to my next slide, I don't know, I'll give my special party favor. Does anyone know who says civilization begins with fermentation? William Faulkner, who had a kind of a local mindset too. He lived in a backwater. And I think the theme of the gateways is that you can really begin your civilization anywhere. And just throw a dart. Brockton, Lynn, Chelsea. These are fantastic places to be doing your life, to be doing grant making, to build a nonprofit. It really helps to focus on assets. Small geography is a funding strategy. It's a little bit, if you think of the Big Bang, how we supposedly came out of a very tiny thing, very compressed, and enormous energy came out of it. A similar thing happens with your limited grant dollars. Parker is small. It only gives $1 million a year. But if you focus in a very narrow circle, the exchange rate is incredible. And basically, if you want to simplify this, the Boston funders are getting probably less of a bang for their buck than the Lynn, the Chelsea, the Brockton, whoever. So you can really do more with your money. Within this, I mean, you can stop with your little circle, and this is how you fund. You can be opportunistic and just go with the energy. I think of United Teen Equality Center, which when we started with them had a budget of about $40,000, but you know, with a little leveraging with us, and they got national support from Robert Wood Johnson and so forth. They now have a school. They have a great new $6 million building. It grew kind of with us. We didn't do anything particularly other than be there with the right venture money at the time, and it ended up being a lot of money. I mean, over $1 million. There was a group of church people in Concord, Mass., the Unitarian Church, kind of the home base of Unitarianism in the United States. These people said, we don't want to be like Jimmy Carter, building these Habitat for Humanity houses or doing soup kitchens. We want to use our professional skills, and we want to do it with a city. So you had accountants and web people and business consultants, that sort of thing, going up. That was the Jericho Road project. We funded that at the very beginning, and it did take off, and it's now separately incorporated in Lawrence, and they have one in Worcester and some in other parts of the country. So those were happy stories. We have been at times within this tiny circle strategic, and I think our happiest story is the creation of the Greater Lowell Community Foundation, which really our trustees decided they wanted to do. And so they gave $1.6 million of their assets, and required challenge funding. And that is now as big as we are, and frankly more strategic. What they're doing in education now is a lot more interesting than anything we ever did in education, and as a good community foundation should be. They've identified big issues and we're tackling them. And I think the other sort of strategic quasi-strategic thing we've done with very mixed results is to emphasize diversity. Lowell has been a real immigrant city from the get-go. First the Irish, the Greeks, French Canadians, and so forth, the Asians, in between the Latinos. But it gets a little ossified and small-towny, and if you look at board management, it's overwhelmingly white, and if you look at city government, overwhelmingly white. We've had fellows programs. We have now, I think, the first Cambodian trustee of a foundation in the United States, who, by the way, is married to the guy with the machine, who turned out okay. And we have also been very supportive of leadership training programs in the city. There's a group called the Lowell Plan, which has a program called Public Matters. Jericho Road has its own little board diversity inclusion training program. The Deshpande Foundation, our colleague, is doing great work with a project called the Merrimack Valley Sandbox. So I think it's changing, but that is one little dynamic where I think the small cities tend to fall a little bit behind big cities like Boston, which still has enormous challenges in that area. So that's basically our story.
All right. You can, the next slide. I won't talk a lot about this slide, but this is one that our foundation has used tremendously. One of the things we believe in.
I'm sorry, can you use the mic a little bit?
I'm sorry.
It's okay. Thanks.
One of the things we do really well at the Davis Foundation is steal shamelessly. And a number of years ago, we stole this, and we're looking to see from whom we stole it, because we intend to give attribution, but we just haven't really figured out where we stole it from. But we use it, and when I say that the things that we know that a foundation can do to cause change, here's where we are, and here's where I got my gadfly label. The thing that we will add when we change this slide is we are going to add public policy and advocacy, because it's something that we do and believe in tremendously, and understand that the problems that we're dealing with are bigger than we have the ability to handle. So we do a lot of public policy and advocacy work, because we have to change the way people look at school systems and the government treats young children. So if you'll do the next slide. My initiative at the Davis Foundation is called Reading Success by Fourth Grade. Our foundation convened our community 15 years ago because they believe terribly in it. They believe that education is important. As a precision manufacturer, they knew that if people couldn't come in and do basic math and do basic reading skills, they would not make a good employee. So education is dear to them. We convened our community. We're small. Everyone knows the Davis family. They're very humble and have no agenda other than to help. So we convened our community. We said, what aspect of education should we work in? And the community said, early childhood education. And so for a number of years, we focused on a wide array of early childhood issues. We said, what would happen if we put the child at the center of our community's agenda? And we worked pretty successfully with a great deal of emphasis on early childhood education, raising its quality, doing a lot of public policy and advocacy around early childhood education. But our story began for real when John Davis, our senior trustee, he's a data guy, and in God we trust, everybody else bring data. John Davis would carry around the third grade MCAS scores for Springfield, Massachusetts, and in 2009 he said to our community, through his networks, where is the outrage? 33% of our kids in Springfield, Massachusetts were reading proficiently at the end of third grade. And because of our early childhood background, we knew the critical nature of that milestone. If a child isn't a proficient reader, their academic trajectory is not something we can tolerate. So we convened our community again. We said, how do we move the needle as a community with our community partners? And it was everybody. It was our public school system, our community providers, everyone who touched the lives of children. We convened them again and we said, here's the vision. Do you share it? Everybody said yes. Everybody got it. And how do we begin to work together? in a little bit of a different way. So we created Reading Success by Fourth Grade. We set a goal, and we said that to succeed, every child needs the support of their family, the schools, and their community. And we need to create a literacy-rich environment in our community. And after all, Springfield, Massachusetts is the birthplace of Dr. Seuss. So everyone should be able to read every word that the man wrote. And we're also the home of Merriam-Webster. They know a lot of words, too. So that's our goal. When I said I'm a gadfly, it's true. I am always out looking for new partners. We're a small foundation. We can't fund everything, but we can with the help of our friends. And so but one of the first things that we realized was around this issue of reading proficiency by the end of third grade is that there are an awful lot of people, me included, when I raised my children, I did read to them, but it was not because I knew anything about the brain research, about how a child's brain develops in the first 5 years, how 85% of their brain is developed in the first 5 years. I just did it probably because my mother was an English teacher and she would never leave me alone. But the brain research was really powerful, and people don't know that. And every parent births their child wanting them to be the most successful child on the face of the earth. So they can have a real role in that by reading and talking and singing to their children from the time they're born. And it's something that not every parent knows. And so as a foundation, my background happened to be in communications and marketing. And so we came to this decision that a huge part of our community-wide campaign, Reading Success by what is it called? Reading Success by fourth grade is communication. And so we did a great deal of work. This is how we looked at the campaign. We said we're going to do a great deal around public awareness, public policy and advocacy I've talked about, our partnerships with our families, our schools, and our community, and our partners. If you show the next slide, I would like you to see the fact that the Davis Foundation is funding, we're actually buying advertising. So the first thing we did was redevelop our website. We have a great website, readingbyfourthgrade.com, which has resources for funders, for public policy, for parents. We have a significant Spanish population in our community, so we have developed Spanish radio ads. We buy time. We have a partnership with our Spanish newspaper. We do a great deal on Twitter. I was probably the first one who tweeted today, I bet you. And do you believe? Look at my hair. Think of my age. I tweet. And we have a Facebook page called Reading Success by Fourth Grade, which we have found to be very successful. We ask families to send us photos of them reading to their children, reading Dr. Seuss books especially. And we get tremendous, a grandmother sends me a photo, and by the next day I have 10 new likes on Facebook because everyone in that family. And every time we put up a photo, we give a reading tip to a parent. So we found communications has to be a focus, and it's something foundations don't always like to do. Partnerships, we talk a lot about partnerships. We said that the Davis Foundation can't do it all in our community, so we pulled together a funder collaborative. We have raised about $1.5 million, which is good for Springfield, Massachusetts, with our United Way, our Community Foundation, our Mass Mutual, our smaller funders, and we're all focusing together on changing reading outcomes for kids in Springfield. I think what I would say that a foundation can do as a leader of a community initiative like this is, we know that we can communicate. We know that we can convene, and for our community that's important with experts and content people. We also are planning strategies for success with our community. We can bring them together frequently. We fund data gathering. We have to figure out what it is we're doing. What are we doing? Are we doing it better? And is anyone better off because of what we're doing? We work with experts like Noni Lasso at the Harvard Grad School of Education and think about how programs how our nonprofits are designing their programs to change outcomes. A book drive doesn't have the same outcome as an intensive tutoring program. And we can, because of the respect people have in our community, we can align what's going on in the community to help us get toward the goal. So that's my story.
Wow, covered a lot of things here. What I thought we could do is just kind of look back and see the notes that Allie's been taking here and really talk about all the different pieces that we've touched upon here. And if you're going to point them out where they are, the different puzzle pieces, Allie, were the models.
Community models, partnerships, leveraging and connecting, advocacy, profile raising, convening, ideas, transparency.
And we said it was going to get a little messy, right? But they're all important pieces in order to make the difference between what makes, good community leadership and really, really powerful, meaningful philanthropic endeavors. So at this point, just a quick time check. We've got about another 5 minutes or so. If there's some questions that you guys have in particular for any one of the panelists that really resonated with you, that you'd like to have a little follow-up question on. There's certainly interesting things about using the technology, the donor relationships between potential programs that are out there, how to really help those partnerships along. Anything that are happening in your own lives that you'd like to have some good expert advice in that you're thinking of? Yeah.
We're in kind of a unique situation. I'm Susan Collins with the Art Connection, and we have now sister sites in New Bedford and in Beverly, and we're very fortunate to have a fund at the Boston Foundation where we are able to grant startup grants to create art connections in other cities. And we've been looking at possibly on Cape Cod or in Lowell or out in Western Massachusetts. But we don't necessarily know who the best people to talk to are in those gateway cities. Where we might be able to figure out, we're not able to, what we do is we offer our...
You need good reconnaissance
Yeah.
information from
Yeah,
who's
yeah.
making the good stuff happen.
Because
in
what
those
we want to
towns.
do is we want to start similar programs there and then let them take off on their own in their
Right.
city with some funding from us.
That's great. How do you, Kevin, think about who the good groups are?
I have a long inventory of people that you can talk to and prioritize.
I mean, it's very specific, and we've had great success with existing arts organizations or art colleges because they seem to already have the infrastructure to just then add on the program as opposed to trying to start a 501c3.
And that's exactly right. I think, and that too was what Sally had mentioned, the importance of stealing. I mean, in a good way, just more artists, right? You're being inspired, I'll use that word instead. That inspired leadership, who's doing the good work. You don't have to recreate and being creative enough. Do you have any other suggestions on that, panels, about how to find those right people?
I mean, should we just call up the foundation and explain what we're doing and say, who would you recommend we talk to?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. In the case of the Parker Foundation, we spend an enormous amount of time picking up the phone or helping to pick up phones to get outside dollars into that city, Boston dollars. But similarly, we get field many phone calls from nonprofits based, say, in Boston, who want to do work seriously in Lowell. So the basic drill is, call these people, figure it out, make sure you're welcome. These cities are fiercely proud and protective, and I think often because they're low resource, highly suspicious, but we set you up to...
We've actually made several placements in Lowell, but because of that, we know there's a great need for that kind of programming, which then makes us realize we can't do it all there, but then somebody else there might be able to pick it up.
I mean, that's the thing. As I work for one of my house working for a foundation as well, you certainly do find that people want to talk to you. But that tricky balance, again, back to that balance that you're walking is, you can talk to them, but you don't want to think necessarily it's going to be attached to money. That a cup of coffee to find out what you're doing isn't necessarily going to end up in a grant. So there's the transparency that I think is up on the board, being very transparent about that conversation you're about ready to walk into. Say, look, I need some good information. I don't know where this conversation, and I think a lot of us have conversations, we don't know where that conversation is going to lead. But it all has to start someplace. And let's just see where the Venn diagram of life overlaps or doesn't. So, and then it's all good. You know, it's just like, at least maybe then maybe they can turn you on to somebody else who's doing something that's really more in your sweet spot for your foundation. Question?
Yeah. Community building. And I guess my question is around how foundations are innovating. We heard a lot about innovation earlier today. And I'm curious about that specifically, I guess for time's sake, around exit strategy and how you talk a little bit about bringing in your friends, finding things to stand on. But are there other ways that you're figuring out how what's the long term impact? How do we, you're not going to review funding forever? I think it's no. And if not, what's the strategy for exiting without creating a problem for a nonprofit or a community?
That's a big one.
I think the answer is transparency. I think that we, by convening our community and helping people understand what our goal is, we've found that we're happy to work with partners, we're happy to work with organizations, we're happy to help develop capacity. We have a challenge, frankly, about innovating and evidence-based. And so my trustees, I have one of the trustees says, bring me data. So we have a dilemma because we want to fund programs. We have a tremendous sense of urgency about getting to the goal. The other trustee, frankly, is much more open to innovation, and so that's where you're going to have conversations with people, to say, with foundations, to say, who's the right person for me to connect with, because you're going to find there is a dilemma there about what kinds of things we want to fund, and so, but people are always happy to talk to you and always happy to give you their networks, and I think that's as funders, we're very happy to help you figure out what the best fit is, who wants to hear your story. It might not be me, but it could be Phil. It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Thank you for being here. Remember, take a picture of the graphic recorder. And the thing, keep talking. I'm not going anywhere. We're here for like another half an hour. There's cookies downstairs. And there was an evaluation sheet you need to fill out. Drop it in the box. We all left our cards up here. Take a card. LinkedIn, yes, I'll accept.
I think we need to give a round of applause for the graphic recording.
Yeah.